I've had a handful of people reach out to me recently about how they could shift from being an employee to being an independent contractor, a consultant. What's the process? What do you need to be aware of? I've got that and more coming up. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. There's one of my favorite books way back when is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And what is an E-Myth? Well, in the book, Michael lays out that an E-Myth is the entrepreneurial myth. And that is, I've been working for the man, and, like sort for corporate bureaucracy, all that sort of stuff. And I should just go out and do this myself on my own. I wouldn't have this bureaucracy. And most of all, I wouldn't have all these people that are either making my job harder or telling me what to do. And so a lot of people start their own business out of this entrepreneurial seizure where they say, I've got to get away from this bureaucracy. I can do it better myself. And gosh, if that's you, I would strongly, my goodness, read the E-Myth. And it was probably in my 20 years and working with Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory, it's certainly, easily the #1 book that we've recommended to people as they've thought about starting their own business. I can't think of a book that we've recommended or given out more than the E-Myth Revisited. But this is a little bit different. But I've had a handful of people just in the last couple of weeks, but then also when I look at it over the past year, that have reached out and said, I'm thinking of going independent. I'm thinking of going and becoming a consultant. I'm thinking of going from an employee to being a contractor. And each of these, it's not because they wanted to start their own business. So it's not directly related to that E-Myth. That's just sort of bonus content there. But it's more so, I'm a technician, I'm doing my job well, and I think I want a little bit more flexibility, or I want to get out from under the current umbrella and current kind of management bureaucracy structure. But it's not that I want to start my own business. I just want to do that and only that. So I think I'm going to consider being a consultant or an independent contractor and basically just do that work, but contract it out to different businesses. And first and foremost, we've got to think all the way through that and make sure that is really what's best in your situation. I wouldn't talk anyone out of it, but you're going to want to think through, well, okay, so are you good at sales? You know, are to align contracts? Are you good with that uncertainty? Yes, there would be more flexibility and more freedom, but that creates a little bit of risk. And so make sure you're having those discussions with someone that will give you the honest, either push you and ask you the hard questions or give you honest input. But you're going to want, this would be a big decision, leaving that paycheck, leaving that employer and going out on your own. But once you've done all of that analysis and thought through all of that, and you've come to the conclusion, yeah, I want to shift from being an employee to being an independent contractor, a consultant, being out on my own and just contracting with companies, then what should you do financially? Well, we've served, maybe 1,000 people or so that have had this very transition. And there's a few things, there's 5 actually, that you need to do when you're making this shift from being an employee to being an independent contractor. Now, these are in no particular order, but a little bit. There's a little bit of thoughtfulness in, well, you've got to do this first and then do that and then do that. Step 1 is you need to open an LLC. You need to open an LLC, and that doesn't need to be an extremely formal thing, but LLC stands for Limited Liability Corporation. You need that limited liability, and this isn't, most people look at an LLC and say, well, I need that because I'm starting a business or I need some tax breaks. No, you need to limit your liability. When you are no longer just an employee and you're an independent contractor, you need to structure the risk so that any risk related to your business is sort of just contained within your business work, and it doesn't infringe on your personal asset. So starting that LLC and getting that in place is going to provide that limited liability. You're going to want to work with an attorney to get the documents drawn up or get the documents in place. Then you'll need your EIN number. You'll need your articles of organization with the state, and an attorney can walk you through that. There's a lot of options online as well, but you've got to be a little more hands-on in that. So step one, get that LLC in place. Step two, and this is what most people think of, is you need to decide, that's right, it's your decision, how you want that LLC to be taxed. Do you want that LLC to be taxed as if you're just a sole proprietor? And that's just, as if you were just hanging a shingle, doing it on your own, you didn't even use the LLC. How is that going to be taxed? Well, like you're self-employed, you're a sole proprietor. You want to get that LLC in place so that your risk is contained, so you have that limited liability. But then you can still choose to have that. Actually, the default is that it's going to be taxed as a sole proprietor, as you're self-employed. So your revenue minus expenses equals your profit, your net income. That profit all of that will be reported on Schedule C of your tax return. It will land on the front page of your personal tax return, your 1040, and you'll have to pay federal taxes, state taxes, and self-employment taxes, which is 15.3%. So that's sole proprietor. Or you could choose to have that LLC, instead of being taxed as a sole proprietor, you could choose to have it taxed like an S Corp. You didn't set up an S Corp. That would be a topic for a different video, you actually wanting to start a business with employees, possibly multiple owners. But you could have your LLC taxed as an S Corp, in which case it gets much more formal. There's more benefits, but there's more costs and more complication. You would actually have to set up payroll. You'd have to put yourself on payroll, okay? Even though you're probably your only employee, you'd have to put yourself on payroll. You'd have to pay yourself a fair and reasonable wage. Through that payroll, you'd have to withhold taxes. You'd have to file 941 quarterly returns, a 940 withholding return. You'd have to pay unemployment. That's right. You'd have to pay unemployment taxes on you, as if you're going to fire yourself or let yourself go. You'd have to file your taxes on an 1120S. Like, there's more complication. But on the salary that you pay yourself, you obviously are subject to federal taxes, state taxes, then FICA, but then also payroll tax. So it's the same as self-employment. But on your profits, the profits of the business that flow through, you pay federal taxes, state taxes, but no self-employment tax. So there could be some tax savings there depending on your situation. And that's why it's such a big decision, because it depends on, well, how much income do you think this as a contractor you're going to earn? How comfortable are you with the added complexities? And determine whether it makes sense to be taxed as a sole proprietor or as an S Corp. I could do tons of videos just on that alone, and very complicated, but that's why this is a financial planning issue. You've got to be working with your CFP on that. Third thing you need to do when you're shifting from employee to independent contractor or consultant, third thing you need to do is get all your insurances in place. And yeah, that LLC will help limit your liability, but you still do need some liability insurance, maybe some property insurance as well. So you need to work with an independent insurance advisor to help you with that. Plus, if you're leaving any benefits behind at your job, health insurance being the primary one, you're going to need to get that in place as well, either through healthcare.gov or exploring other options. So step 3 in going from an employee to independent contractor is figuring out all of your insurances. Step 4 is, how are you going to pay your taxes? How are you going to pay your taxes? We talked in step 2 about, well, how do you want the entity to be taxed? Well, if it's self-employed, if it's a sole proprietorship, then you're going to need to figure out, are you making quarterly estimates, or are you going to withhold from other sources? And how much are those quarterly estimates going to be? How are you going to plan for that? If you're going to have the LLC taxed as an S Corp, then what's your payroll? What are you paying yourself? And are you going to goose up those withholdings so that you withhold all of the taxes for both your payroll and the business through your paycheck? Or are you going to do quarterly estimates as well? You've got to decide, how are you going to pay your taxes? So many people, as they start their business, start their small business, they don't do step 4. They don't figure out, well, how am I going to pay my taxes? And they just sort of, well, I'll figure it out and then we'll see what the tax bill is. And this is what happens. They then file their first tax return. They pay a bunch of money at that time, and then it dawns on them, and there's going to start being penalties that, wait, I need to start doing estimates. So they have to pay a bunch of taxes when they file their return for last year, and they have to start paying quarterly estimates, and they look at you and they say, I don't have that much cash flow. And then it's just this constantly, I'm playing catch up, constantly playing catch up, and you never feel like you're on top of it or getting ahead. And the taxes really, really become a sore and pain point for you. So step 4, as you're transitioning from employee to independent contractor, you've got to work with a CFP and figure out, all right, how are you going to pay the taxes, quarterly estimates, withholdings, what's your plan? And then the fifth step, when you're transitioning from employee to independent contractor, is you've got to figure out your retirement plan, your retirement accounts. When you are working as an employee, you've got your 401k or your 403b or your simple IRA, whatever your employer-sponsored retirement plan is, that's what you got. And maybe you can do a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA on top of that, but that's what you got. Well, when you go independent, whether you're Schedule C, sole proprietor, or Sub S, you've got a choice. You can just do an IRA, Roth IRA. You can do a SEP IRA. As a business, you could do a single K. Maybe you could do a simple IRA. You've got choices. And oftentimes, as you're shifting from employee to independent contractor, you might not set that up immediately because you've got to get things up and running. You've got to get cash flow flowing. But at some point, you're going to want to figure out, well, of those options, what are those options for retirement plans? And then which one makes the most sense for you, and how are you going to fund it? Your CFP is going to help you with that. And it's not just for saving up for your retirement, your financial future. That's obviously very important. But this also becomes a significant part of your tax planning strategy. If the taxes on the small business are cumbersome because you're paying federal, state, and then self-employment tax, both sides of FICA, that can be a lot, 40%, 50% for some folks. And so sheltering dollars into a retirement plan is a great way to manage that tax bill. So that's a lot, guys. And here's the thing. Those are the 5 things that you've got to go through, you've got to do when you're transitioning from being an employee to being an independent contractor. But there's even more than that, and you've got to do all the planning around it. So this is the job of your certified financial planner. This is a financial planning decision, and you've got to work with your CFP, who is collaborating with your health advisors and insurance advisors, collaborating with your CPA, or maybe very heavily involved in doing the tax planning work. You likely has a resource with attorneys or whatever to help you with that. This is a financial planning issue. Work with your CFP when you're transitioning from being an employee to being an independent contractor. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or send us an email, info@Korhorn.com. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.